with the success of What's Love Got to Do with It in '93, so many came to really know Tina's story on screen through Angela Bassett. So were there any specific conversations amongst yourself as directors, strategy-wise, or with Tina on how you guys were going to make this either go beyond what was already seen on screen and it's huge success, or how to go a little deeper to combat those that may say, well, I already saw the movie, I already know what happened. Was there any specific conversations on how this would be different?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, honestly, as I mentioned, well, part of the signing on to it, part of our hesitation, one of the few things before we even committed to making the film was, what are we doing that's adding value to the narrative of Tina Turner? And as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't until those only early conversations that we realized the one thing that's really kind of been void of the retelling of her story is Tina's perspective on the narrative of Tina, right? Thinking about it as two characters, and more importantly, this understanding that surviving is a thing that's for her is a process, and she's still even processing it at this chapter in her life when she's 80 years old. So in thinking that way, it felt like we had an opportunity to add a new POV to Tina's story, and then it actually liberated us to lean in on all these other mediums. So instead of kind of figuring out a way to for this film to have its own identity and what are we doing differently, we actually just said, well, let's embrace all those other mediums, because that's very much woven into the fabric of how we as a society has influenced our perception of Tina. So once we decided to incorporate that, it actually just freed us up a lot to hopefully make something different that gave you that added value, that gave you that something a little bit deeper, because it was not the telling of Tina Turner's story, it's the perspective of Tina's perspective on her own story. And also just I as we've said before, there's a version of this that is a 10-part series where you could go into every decade and really kind of explore the artistry of the evolution of her career, and that's obviously something we didn't fully lean in on, but there was something, it seemed like, with every telling of her story, that it always kind of ended with the success of What's Love Got to Do with It, the song, not the movie, right? And so for us, it was like, if we can at least break that barrier and continue to go on past that chronologically speaking, time-wise, then we'll be entering new territory to see how Tina continued to not just evolve, but how she continued to kind of manage the narrative of Tina.
Tina's relationship with her mom is obviously, it's very complicated. And I think we tried to do our best in the film to highlight from Tina's point of view how she has emotionally kind of struggled with that relationship. I think it would be hard to imagine Tina's life. I think she would say this. It would be hard to imagine her life had her mom not made the decision to leave her father at the age that Tina was, and when she did. That's the real kind of, I don't know if it's irony really, but Tina's mom was escaping from what we understand, was escaping an abusive partner as well, and kind of left for her own safety, and purposely did not let anyone know where she was going for the purposes of not being able to be tracked by her husband.